For 100 years, the Winter Olympics have given us everything. Unbelievable skill, pure drama, and yeah, a whole lot of politics, all played out on ice and snow. But the journey from this, really controversial idea to the global giant we know today, it's a story of survival. And it starts in a place you would never expect. So let's dive.
Okay, so let's go all the way back to 1924, to this small French alpine town, Chamonix. Just 258 athletes, that's it, from only 16 nations, and they all gathered for something called International Winter Sports Week. You really got to forget the huge spectacle we know today. This was a super humble, almost experimental get-together.
Now, let's jump forward almost a century to Beijing 2022. The games have just exploded. We're talking nearly 3,000 athletes from 91 different nations. The growth is just staggering, right? But the story of how we got from there to here, well, it is not a simple one.
Here's the thing you might not know. The Winter Games weren't born from some big unified vision. Nope, they were actually born from conflict, a really fierce resistance that almost stopped them before they even got started.
So, let's get into it. This is basically a fight for who would control winter sports. So on one side, you had the Scandinavian countries. They'd been hosting their own very successful Nordic Games since 1901. And to them, that was the absolute peak of winter sport. They actively, and I mean actively, opposed an Olympic version because they were worried it would take away from their prestige. And then on the other side, you have the International Olympic Committee, the IOC, who wanted to bring their global, open competition model to the snow and ice.
The breakthrough finally came with a compromise. The IOC agreed to sanction an unofficial trial event in Chamonix, but they were super careful not to use the word Olympics to keep the Nordic countries happy. It was really just a test run, but guess what? It was so successful that 2 years later it was retroactively named the very first Winter Olympic Games.
And that first event was just full of these unforgettable moments. An American, Charles Jutra, became the first ever winter gold medalist. An 11-year-old from Norway named Sonja Henie made her debut. Okay, she finished last, but it definitely hinted at the legendary career she was going to have. And the Canadian hockey team? Oh my gosh, they were just terrifyingly dominant, outscoring their opponents 122-3. The whole thing was a massive hit, and just like that, the Winter Olympics were officially born. But this brand new tradition was almost immediately put to the test by a world that was just spiraling into chaos. So in 1936, the Games were held in Germany, under the Nazi regime. This was just a few months before the infamous Berlin Summer Olympics, and this event was basically used to project this image of a peaceful, efficient, new Germany to the entire world. It was a really chilling dress rehearsal for the propaganda machine that was about to come.
And then, the world went dark. World War II forced the cancellation of both the 1940 and the 1944 Games. The Olympic flame was basically out for 12 very long years before it was finally rekindled in neutral Switzerland in 1948. These became known as the Games of Renewal.
But, renewal didn't exactly mean forgiveness. The scars of war were still so fresh. Germany and Japan, the aggressor nations, were banned from participating. It was this really stark reminder that even in the world of sport, you just could not ignore global politics.
As one huge global conflict ended, another one began, and it turned the Olympic ice into a completely new kind of battlefield, the Cold War.
The whole dynamic of the Games just changed completely in 1956. The Soviet Union showed up for its first Winter Olympics, and boom! In a stunning display of power, they immediately dominated the medal count. Right then and there, the Olympics became a primary front in the Cold War. Every single victory was framed as proof that one ideology was superior to the other. And this rivalry, it hit its absolute peak at the 1980 Lake Placid Games. On one side, you had the Soviet hockey team, the Red Machine, a team of state-sponsored pros who had won the last 4 Olympic golds. On the other side, a super scrappy American team made up of college kids and amateurs. Nobody, and I mean nobody, gave them a chance.
But then, in what is still one of the greatest upsets in sports history, the U.S. team won, 4-3. Broadcaster Al Michaels' famous call just perfectly captured the feeling of an entire nation. This was so much more than a hockey game. It was a symbolic victory that became a defining cultural moment of the Cold War.
After the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Games entered a totally new era, one driven less by ideology and more by television, money, and of course, modern drama.
A really crucial business decision was made in 1986. The IOC decided to separate the Winter and Summer Games, putting them in different years. And this gave the Winter Olympics its own exclusive spotlight. Well, that opened the floodgates for TV rights and sponsorships, and it completely transformed the event into a commercial powerhouse.
And, to capture this massive new audience, the Games had to evolve. They started embracing youth culture, adding faster, more thrilling sports like freestyle skiing, the absolute chaos of short-track speed skating, and the counterculture cool of snowboarding. Yeah, this was not your grandfather's Olympics anymore.
But with big money came big costs, and some really big pressure. The 2014 Sochi Games became the most expensive Olympics ever, with a reported price tag of over $50 billion. That incredible investment created this immense pressure on the host nation to win, at any cost.
And that pressure, it led to one of the darkest scandals in Olympic history. It was later revealed that Russia had run this incredibly sophisticated state-sponsored doping program. The whole scheme was something straight out of a spy movie, with tainted urine samples being passed through a literal hole in the wall of the anti-doping lab to be swapped for clean ones. It was insane.
Which brings us to today. After surviving a century of political turmoil, the Games now face what might be their most existential threat yet.
And that threat is climate change. The data is, well, it's alarming. Average February temperatures in past host cities have already risen by nearly 5 degrees Fahrenheit. It's gotten so warm that the most recent games in Beijing had to rely 100% on artificial snow.
The reality is just so stark. A study from 2022 concluded that if emissions keep up at their current rate, by the 2080s, only one of the 21 cities that have ever hosted the Games, just one, Sapporo, Japan, will have a climate that's reliable enough for winter sports. Just one. Let that sink in.
From a contested idea to a global phenomenon, the Winter Olympics have always found a way to endure. But as we look ahead to the next 100 years, the biggest question isn't about politics or money anymore. It's whether there will be any winter left for the Winter Games.